Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Enlightened Misanthrope with episode 5. Um, let's see. I'm coming in kind of hot today because I was in the grocery store this morning, and well, best way I can put it is shit pissed me off. And actually, instead of it being, my proverbial usage of the word shit for random stuff, it's actually shit that pissed me off. So anyway, I'll give you a little bit of the backstory. This morning, my girlfriend and I went to the grocery store, and she had the morning off, so she wanted to come along and go shopping with me. So we went to the first store, because I'm one of those guys. I get the flyer and I make a list, and I go to this store for a couple of things. I go to that store for a couple of things and stuff like that. I'm not a guy who just goes to one store at a time. Just one store, and I'm like, go to Walmart and get everything. As we've covered, I'm not exactly fond of Walmart for a lot of reasons, so I'm not going to go there for all of my food needs. Anyway, so the point being is that I made my way to Walmart, and I made my way to Pick and Save, and when I went to Pick and Save, I came in and I forgot my list, so I didn't have my list. So I went outside, and as we were getting the carts, when I realized I didn't have my list, there was this couple standing there. And little did I know that this couple would plague me the rest of the time I was in the store. So as you walk in, there's a little bit of like a right, you bear right as you walk in the second set of doors. And when you do that, there's like some seasonal shit there, and then they have flowers on the right hand side. So you walk past. And when I walked in, I smelled something that stunk, and I couldn't think of what it was at first. And then as I walked further towards the produce department, it got stronger, and then I started to realize what it was, and it was cow shit. And, I'm gonna say this as a disclaimer. Both of my grandparents farmed at one point. I worked on farms. I've been around cow shit. I used to make me money, and guess what? I still don't like it. Okay? I've never liked the smell of cow shit, ever, in my entire life. Some people do. I know there are certain farmers that I know that'll go, smells like money. And it's like, okay, you can think that. It's disgusting and it smells like, a cow's asshole, but whatever, that's up to you. Anyway, the point being is that that's how those guys feel. And so anyway, I was in the store, and this couple that I had seen get the carts before us, they came in their shit kickers. So for those of you unindoctrinated into what shit kickers are, those are basically the boots you wear in the barn. So these inconsiderate fucking assholes decided to come from the barn and go into the grocery store. And not only in the grocery store, but then they had the audacity to go in the department, into the produce department, with open air vegetables and fruit. Because you know what? Your shit particles are getting all over that food. I don't care. You can yell at me if you want, if you don't agree, but the point is that's the science. That's why you smell shit in your nose. Those are tiny shit particles. So if those shit particles are in the air, they're getting on the food. Okay? So I came to the store to do my grocery shopping. Now, many of you may, enable yourself with the Walmart stuff where you just show up, that I talked about a couple of weeks ago, where you just show up and they give you shit in a bag and then you leave. Okay, but I like to shop and think about what I'm going to make and so on and so forth. And I enjoy shopping because I think about the meals that I'm going to have. And I can't tell you how quickly you lose your how quickly I lose my appetite at the smell of cow shit. I cannot stand it. Is the most disgust. I hate it. I fucking hate it. So then these assholes decide to come to the grocery store, and they didn't look shabbily, like they weren't dressed terribly, they didn't have cow shit all over, but their boots were, you could tell there was cow shit on their boots. I've seen it before. I know what it looks like, and there it was. And so my girlfriend, of course, is oblivious to the whole situation. She can't really smell very well, and she doesn't pay very close attention to things. She's one of those people who kind of just experience life. She goes through life having lots of experiences because she never sees anything coming. And I'm the opposite. I'm always on, I'm on guard basically all the time. And so she starts following these fuckers. I'm like, stop going that way. She's like, why? I said, because they fucking reek. She's like, what? And I walked away from her because I thought I was going to have a fucking stroke in the store. I'm not even kidding you. I was so pissed off by the time we left. Like, I wanted to physically assault. I was so angry. And it wasn't so much because of what they did, but it was a larger thing. But we'll get back to that later. The point is that then I walked away, and she followed me, and she said, well, what do they smell like? I said, well, it's not BO. I said, they got their fucking shit kickers on, and it's disgusting. And she's like, oh yeah, well, they do that. She cuts hair, and she said, yeah, they do that. They come in and, they come right from the barn and get their hair cut. And I was like, if I owned a business and you came into my business smelling like that, I'd tell you to get lost. But then around here, if I did that, I'd be the asshole, because, all these assholes who do that won't show up, and they'll tell all the other assholes who, are around, and they'll be like, oh, well, they discriminate against people who farm. It's like, no, I don't discriminate against people who farm. Okay, I don't know if any of you know, but when you go to a farmer's house, usually they don't like to have the barn stuff inside the house. They have like a mud room or a breezeway or whatever fucking little path, little area of the house that's before the actual entrance to the house. And so you put all your shit there that has shit on it, your boots, your thing, your whatever. Some have a shower equipped, so you can take a shower right there. A relative of mine had a house like that, where, now granted, there wasn't an actual door, but there was an entryway, and then there was a shower in the bathroom that was right there, because you'd shower and then you'd go in the house, and then you'd walk into the kitchen and it'd be time to eat dinner. And I always thought that was a really good idea. Some places have actual showers in the barn, like away from the barn, that you can take a shower and change your clothes and all kinds of stuff like that. And there's ways to do it where you're respectful of the other human beings that you might interact with, because you know what? Not everybody wants to smell cow shit. You might make your living with cow shit. We might, eat cows and that kind of stuff, but I don't necessarily want to smell cow shit. I hate it. My mother has property around by me that they spread cow shit on, and she gets paid for it, and so it helps out. Well, I still don't like it. I hate that smell. When the wind comes from the right direction and it comes by my house, and I'm like, oh, they fucking spread cow shit again. God damn it, that fucking reeks. And around here, it's really bad. Like, it's worse than other places, and I'm not being hyperbolic. I mean, it's honestly, I've been, in Wisconsin, there's a lot of places that spread shit on the fields and a lot of other stuff, and I go to other areas of the state, and when they have shit in the fields, it doesn't smell near as bad as some of the stuff around where I'm currently living. And so they come in the store, and I'm following them around, and I'm getting worked up. Granted, I was out of control, and I was just, but I literally, like, I was out of breath. I was like hyperventilating. I was so mad. I can't even really explain it, but like, I was dizzy. I couldn't breathe. Like, I couldn't catch my breath. I was so mad. I was so angry. And it's not just because they had shit on their boots. I mean, that's part of it, and that was like the trick. But it's this general, like, fucking asshole behavior that people have now. Like, you have no consideration for a fellow human being. None. I mean, I think I heard somewhere one time that, if one person's offended by it, then you're not allowed to do it. Well, I'm not like that, but, if you really had, like, you could say, well, the farm that they go to is further away from their house, and the store is in between their house and the barn, so they stopped at the store on the way home. Okay, but when you get up in the morning, you're going to do that, because I don't know if farmers, if you're listening to this, because you might not, but farmers are fairly well structured through the day, because they got to get up at a certain time and milk the cows, and then they got to do X amount until they can milk the cows again, so they have to have their day pretty well laid out. They can't just like go laze about. And so if you knew you were going to the grocery store after you milked the cows the first time, well, then you could have brought fucking shoes along. You could have brought different shoes. You could have done a number of things. You could have washed your fucking boots off. You could have done just about anything. But because you didn't care about me or my experience or anybody else for that matter, other than your fucking self, because, oh, I gotta stop at grocery store. I'm just gonna go grocery store. I don't care. I walked in cow shit for the last 2.5 hours. I don't care. Everybody else should have to deal with it. I don't even smell it anymore. Of course you don't, because I heard this thing on Joe Rogan's podcast, or one of the podcasts that I listen to, that the nose doesn't smell things, like, it smells it once, and then unless it changes, it doesn't smell it again. So they walked in the barn, they smelled cow shit, their nose normalized to it, and then they didn't smell it the rest of the day. Like, they just didn't smell it. And for me, it's not a normal smell. So then, and granted, like, I'm very sensitive in a lot of ways, but as far as senses go, that's the worst. Like, auditory senses, I'm tortured by noise all the time. Granted, you might say that this podcast is me trying to torture people by noise, but it is what it is. But I can be tortured by noise. Smells, I'm very sensitive to. I'm sensitive to touch. I'm just, my senses are sensitive. Like, people will touch me and I'll jump and, like, flinch. And my friends used to think it was funny. Like, they thought it was hilarious. And I'm like, you'll think it's fucking funny because every time I do that, I turn around and I'm quick enough to recognize, oh, okay, it's you and you're not doing anything to me. Because you'd swear like I have PTSD. I have no idea why. I don't recall anything that traumatic that happened to me that would cause me to be that way, especially with touch. But it's possible that it could have happened. I mean, I come from a fucked up childhood, so lots of bad things happened to me, and some of it, like, people tell me, there are certain things that I don't remember that happened, and some people tell me, and they aren't like atrocious things. They're things that happened that I was a part of. It wasn't done to me. I was a part of it, and I just apparently blocked it out. I don't really know, but the point being is that they, I have this issue where you don't. So I turn around and I look at him. Otherwise, I want to punch him in the face. So I'm not somebody who, like, you mess with my senses and I'm just going to kind of go around, get away with it. I'm not going to be okay with it. And so for me, like, when people do that kind of stuff, I mean, it just shows me the amount of disrespect you have, not only for me, but for yourself and for everybody else you're dealing with. Because, I mean, people with shit on their boots, or the people who don't shower, I mean, that's really what I want to smell, is your BO and your sweaty, smelly, dirty ass, because you can't be bothered to scrub there well enough or to shower often enough, because you're, and it's not always people who are fat slobs. I mean, it's people who, because, heavy set people can't fucking, do all that stuff. And I understand that, but there are things you can invest in that will help you do that. There are some thin people who are just disgusting and they just are like, I don't feel like it. It's like, and granted, you can be depressed and all this other stuff, but, I'm depressed. I still take a shower. Now, do I shower every day? Well, of course not. I don't do a lot of stuff every day, but now this is something since high school, because I remember a time in high school that a girl accused me of smelling, and I was probably 15 or 16. I was very angry at this point. I was angry for a long time, but I was like at my peak at this point, and I lost my fucking mind. I just started yelling at her. I think I flipped over a table and I threw something across the room and I left the room. And I did fucked up shit when I was younger. I mean, it's just who I was. I had anger issues and I had control problems. Now, I never did any physical violence really to anybody. I just lashed out in ways that, probably weren't the best, but I was frustrated and I was upset and I wasn't in control of my own life, and all those things that as a kid you don't know how to deal with, and as you get older you get a little more perspective and you understand the mistakes. You got to go through some of that. I mean, I had to go through some of that stuff to get better. And so the point being is that ever since she said that to me, I've always, because I was mad, because I'm very careful about that. Like, I put on deodorant. I even put on some body spray, or always put on some cologne, and I make sure that when I'm in the shower, I take time, and I try to do a good job, and I usually am fairly successful at that. And so for me, like, today is my day off, so I don't have to do anything. And I just walk. I go home. I go to school tomorrow, and then I go to the gym afterwards, and then I take my shower Thursday night, because you shouldn't wash your hair every day. Especially in the wintertime. Around here, the less time spent in water, the less dried out your skin is going to be. Now, granted, I wash my hands compulsively almost, so it becomes really bad in the winter. But so I always make sure, like, tomorrow I'll go to school. I'll put on my deodorant in the morning and I'll spray myself with body spray. And you can't tell me that you'd rather smell my my pits or my ass, if that's the case, or another guy's pits or another guy's ass, instead of a little cologne. Now, granted, if I drank, like my mother, she's allergic to a lot of that stuff. She can't wear a lot of it, but if she does wear it, then she smells like she took a bath in it. And I'm like, how much did you put on, and that, then I can understand, there's a medium ground there, and that's usually what I do. I spray a little bit, and then I go out. And I go outside, I stand in the wind. I usually open the windows while I'm driving, so it kind of, blows some of that off and stuff like that. So I understand how to make it so, okay, It's present, but it's not overbearing. And you can't tell me that even if you don't like the kind of cologne that I have on or the kind of body spray that I use or whatever, you can't tell me that you'd prefer BO and dirty ass to some kind of cologne that's not your favorite. You know what I'm saying? Because that's generally more appealing than fucking I don't know, just disgusting body smells. And I'm not saying that, not everybody has that. I have it and I work to combat it. I'm just sick of and tired of the general fucking, attitude around here and everywhere that I go that you should have to deal with my shit. In general, it seems like the whole country's like that. Everybody thinks everybody should deal with their shit and eat it. And it's like, I don't want to. What happened to the days when, you did you and I do me, and, if we interact with each other, that's fine, but if we don't, that's okay too, and you'll just be fine with who you are and I'll be fine with who I am. I don't expect you to look after me, you don't expect me to look after you. If we're friendly and we get along and we have like a certain detente where it's like, yeah, I'll kind of take care of your shit and you help me with this, and the old ways of doing things in that respect seem better, instead of this this nonsense which we're doing now, which is everybody's supposed to be responsible for everybody, and then half of the people that are supposed to be responsible for the other half of the people don't want to be responsible for those people, so then they're screaming and hollering all the time. Like, the freedom of choice just seems to be, it seems to disappear, and then the respect of somebody making that choice. Now, I don't respect people who make that, who go around and they smell, okay? I respect the fact that they have the choice to do that, but I think there's something to be said for common decency. And it used to be like my grandmother, before she passed, she used to talk about church. And she'd go to church, and, when she was a younger woman and into her middle age, you went to church dressed up. I mean, you wore earrings and a dress, and the husbands wore suits or ties or dress shirts, whatever. And now, in the last few years of her life, she'd go to church and complain to me. She'd say, you'd swear to God they were going to bed or something. One day she came back and she said somebody was wearing pajamas in church. I just about left. She said that was ridiculous. And I mean, I'm not saying you should go to church and not wear pajamas if you want to, but I think that in certain areas, in certain respects, you could have a little respect for that stuff. If you're going to church and you're wearing, pajama pants, maybe don't go to church. If it's not that important, that's fine. Don't go. But the people who do go and do dress up are going to look badly upon you. And a lot of people are like, well, who cares what they think? Well, you want them to care what you think, right? So life's all about give and take. And I'm willing to understand that the farmers have things to do, but they also have to understand that I don't want to smell cow shit all the time. Like, they spread shit on the fields. If I had my way, if I ruled the world, I'd say you can't spread shit on the fields. Ever. Period. That's what I'd like to have happen. We would be really suffering in the agricultural department, but that's what I would say around my house. They'd never be able to. But I understand that we have to do that, to grow the crops, to do this, to do that. I get that. But I should be able to go to the grocery store and not have fucking assholes walk in with shit on their fucking shoes because they're too lazy to change their shoes. That's the give and take that I'm talking about. I'm saying I'm willing to put up with the smell on the fields and understand that, 30 some odd times a year or more, I'm going to drive past someplace or go to my house and get out of my car, and the wind's going to come from the fucking east and it's going to hit me in the face, and I'm going to smell cow shit like there's a cow shitting in front of me, And I understand that, and I don't like it. I wish I could do something else about it, but I'm understanding that needs to happen. So I can't, what can I say, right? I like to eat, so fine. But I don't need you're milking cows and all that other stuff. You could have an extra pair of shoes in your truck or in your car. I mean, these people that farm do not drive like fucking, smart cars that are tiny and they can't fit anything in them. Now I got fucking pickup trucks and SUVs and all this other shit. So there's more than enough room for you to put an extra pair of shoes that don't have cow shit on them. They can even be your shittiest pair. Like, I don't care what kind of shoes you wear. They could be the shoes that you should have thrown away 10 years ago, right? But they don't smell, and you can wear them to the store. That's all that matters. You just put them on, slip them on, walk in, do your shopping, and leave. I don't care if you were in there with your jacket or whatever. The fact that the shit kickers are what stink the most. That's always what I found, because there's literal shit on them. And I just I just don't understand why, why we've gotten this place where, there's no, it's just, you have no common, there's no common decency. Like, you can't even be partially respectful because everybody's going to do whatever the hell they want to do. Well, that's fine, but in the places where you interact with people who might not agree with the way you live your life, or might not agree with, the things that you're doing or whatever, instead of going in there and assaulting them, like, just to, I mean, because my senses were assaulted. That's how I felt. Now, I'm not saying that's for lack of a better term, but you're going in there and you're antagonizing me. Like, that's all you're doing, because there was no need for you to walk in there with cow shit on your boots. There was no need. Like, the farm, there used to be, where my mom lives, there's a grocery store that's literally like, oh Christ, I can't even think, 100 feet from a farm. Like, there's the grocery store and then there's a farm. Like, and there's no space in between the two properties. And when the wind comes out of the right direction, you smell the shit off the fields, all that stuff. And if those people came in with the fucking shit on their shoes because they were chasing a cow through the fucking aisle, that would make more sense. But in the area that I live now, at the Pick and Save, there is no farm anywhere that close to that fucking place. These people had to get in their car and drive at least 5 to 10 minutes into town to get to the grocery store. So in that time, they made the choice to come in there with shit on their shoes and to affect my life in a negative way, and almost give me a stroke because I was that upset. I was very upset. And granted, I was maybe too upset, but it's just one of those things. I hate cow shit. I can't stand it. And the fact that I had to go in the grocery store this morning and smell, and they were younger people too. Like, and they didn't look stupid. They didn't look like they were, redneck assholes. They looked like normal people who, are, they aren't combative. You could have a conversation. They seemed like reasonable people, and they came in with cow shit on their shoes. And I'm just like, what? Now, granted, I was doing a lot of generalizing there, but the thing is that I think that's part of what made me angry, was because they were younger people who looked reasonable, and they're in there with cow shit on their shoes, and it's like, who taught you? How do you think that this is okay? And where did you guys get this idea that this is okay? Like, to come into the store with cow shit on your shoes. Well, I just gotta go for 5. It doesn't matter if you have to go for 5 minutes, 5 hours, or 5 fucking days. Change your shoes. That's all you gotta do. Change your fucking shoes and get it over with. It's not that hard. I don't know. It just seems to me that, it seems to me that you'd be better off changing your shoes instead of, because I wanted to physically assault. Like, I was very angry with these people, like, to the point I almost couldn't control myself. And it would seem to me that you'd want to avoid that. Like, I don't go to the store, and if I was in, like, I wouldn't go someplace, and I don't go anywhere and try to piss people off. Like, I just don't. I'm fairly amicable when I go out, because I understand that generally I don't like the rest of the world, but I have to be able to pass through it without getting arrested. So I have to pretend like I'm amicable and, easygoing and whatever else. I very rarely am. Like, I went to Walmart after that, and I stood in line for 45 minutes with these old people writing out fucking checks, and then this old couple in front of me is fighting with each other and going even slower, and then they're like, oh, can't you do this here? And they're just being rude to the woman behind the counter, and it's like, I just can't believe what some people do. It was just, it's going out and being with humanity is never a good experience for me, because I just watch what happens and I just get irritated and annoyed, because they all make choices that, 35 years ago, 20 years ago, even, maybe 15 years ago, you wouldn't have seen that. You just wouldn't have seen it. And ever since the recession, it just seems like everybody's just turned the asshole knob up to 100, And maybe you can say that my podcast is me sitting here and being an asshole to people. After the modifying the vehicles thing from last week, yeah, you could maybe say that. But I don't think that what I'm saying, like, all I said was don't ask for unwanted attention, Think about what you're doing before. And that's the same thing I'm saying today. Don't come into the store with cow shit on your shoes. Think about somebody else for 5 minutes. Like, I think about them. I don't go around petitioning people to try to get the people to, have windows when they can spray. Because that's the kind of shit, like, if you live in a homeowners association, there are people in the fucking homeowners association who do shit like that. You can only do this on such and such a day and blah, blah, blah. And I live in, like, the Wild West yet, in that kind of sense, where there is none of that, and the guy with the biggest farm pretty much does whatever he wants. But the point is that that's something that could be done. I could go around and cause trouble. I have a lot of ideas, and, I have more free time then probably is good for me, and I could spend it doing destructive things to everybody, that would be disruptive for everybody else, but I don't do that. Because I don't see the purpose in it. Like, I just don't see it. I don't know. I just wish people were more respectful of other people when they go out in public, because, like, I mean, when you wear clothes, like, there's people who wear clothes that obviously don't fit them, and they're showing parts of their body that nobody's interested in seeing, and they're really not. There was this woman smoking cigarettes and standing in front of doorways and stuff, and that causes cancer. If you want to give yourself cancer, fine, but I shouldn't have to walk through a plume of smoke and breathe that in. And granted, you can say, oh, well, that's what. I don't care. I don't care, because these people obviously don't care, so why should I care how they feel? You know what I'm saying? If you want to be outright hostile, I can be outright hostile. I can be more hostile than anybody you've ever met. Ever. I can almost guarantee it. I am an unreasonable, hostile son of a bitch if I have to be. But I would rather have, like, a happy medium, and work with you and try to get you to, try to get to a common ground, so we can at least, find some way where we can coexist. These fucking people, it doesn't seem like they want to. And if they do, they're not smart enough to think of a way, do you really think I want to walk? You come to Walmart and they got the little cigarette thing right by the door. And instead of standing downwind or standing over, away and smoking and then coming over and putting your cigarette away, no, we have to literally stand right in front of the door and smoke our cigarette. I don't necessarily think that was the reason that thing was put there, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I hope if you listen to this and you do some of that stuff, the next time you do it, you think about it a little bit. Even if you don't do anything different, the fact that you thought about it is a good first step. And then you keep going from there. And then maybe at some point you'll actually, do those things. And then you can be like me and be upset at the people who don't. And, maybe try to work with them, and if you know people like that. I mean, I do that with people I know who do stuff like that. I'm like, no. My girlfriend does stuff like that. I'm like, no, you cannot fucking do that. That's not acceptable. I don't care. Well, this is the way I don't care. Your family's wrong too, and if they want to ask me, I'll tell them. That's the way I feel about this stuff, and it has never gone away. I mean, everybody's like, oh, it'll you blah, blah, blah. No, I felt like this since I was a little kid. There's certain ways to do things, and that was one of the things that I didn't get a lot instilled in me in childhood. Really, not a lot, because my childhood was fucked up, which we're going to cover in the next topic. Not my childhood, but a different subject in that same vein. But, I did get the thing, just be at least minimally respectful to people when you're cohabitating with them in an area. Excuse me, thank you, hold the door, that kind of shit. Just the little stuff. It doesn't take a lot of effort, and it's an easy way to at least not get into fist fights. So as promised, I'll get into the next topic, which is somebody I know is having some family issues, and they are a child of two parents, obviously, and those parents are still together. They're in their mid to late 20s, and their parents are having some issues, and they're fairly severe, but it got me to thinking, because if you have severe issues as you get older, and if your parents get divorced when you're around the age that I am now, is that better or worse? Because my parents divorced when I was 8 years old or so. Well, my parents got separated when I was 8, and they divorced later on. But it taught me a lot of lessons. That's the one thing from it that as the years have gone by, that I've gained appreciation for. Not a lot of it's worth appreciating, but that is. Because a lot of the things that it takes people their 20s and even sometimes their 30s to learn, like lessons about people and how some people are really shitty and this kind, you run into different kinds of people, and you see, and you have to learn things about life, that this doesn't mean what they told you it meant. And because a lot of the things they try to teach kids are ideals. And then the reality of the situation is quite different. But as a kid, you don't learn the reality of the situation. Well, when I was 8, once that happened, I learned nothing but reality after that. I grew up. I'm an old man now, and I'm not even 30. I'm one of those people. And, the one thing that it has taught me is that, the one thing it taught me is in the respect that how do I want to put this? I was a little kid. I learned lessons that some adults don't learn, okay? And I was wondering, is it better to have had that happen when I was younger, or should, if it happens when you're older? Because if it happened to me now, I try to put myself in the situation, and it's like, well, if it happened to me now, you'd have to go through all that same stuff that I went through as a kid. Now, granted, I wouldn't have puberty, I wouldn't have all this other stuff, but then you have, as you get older, you think about life, you have your own kids, you think about death, you think about all these things. When you're a little kid and stuff like that happens, you don't have your own personal concerns because everything's pretty much taken care of for you. You don't have to pay your own bills. You don't have to worry about your health generally. You don't have to worry about, a lot of the things that as an adult you might have to worry about. So say you're older, mid to late 20s, early 30s, whatever. If it's by 40, that's really depressing if your parents get divorced, because it's like at that point you're like, you two were supposed to watch each other, so what the fuck is going on, But if you're in your you're in your middle age and your parents get divorced, if it was me, and granted now because I went through what I went through, if I had to go through it now, I would say, well, this is a fucking lie. All of my life was built on a lie, because there's a lot of people that are empty nesters that get divorced because their relationship may not have been the greatest. It might have been good, and then they had a kid. And anytime you have a kid, anybody who has a kid knows, it drastically changes the relationship you have with the person that you married. And then going forward, you spend money on the kid, you work for the kid, you plan your life around the kid. And if you have a good relationship, you do things outside of that, but a lot of it is centered around the kid. If you're really interested in having, if you're really interested in having a good life for the child, and sometimes you neglect yourself and you neglect your relationship and all this other stuff, and so you don't work on it, you don't think about it, whatever. So then once the kid leaves, or the kid's in his or her 20s, and then they're out of the house, well, then you look at each other and you're like, why the fuck are you still here? And I know so many people who have gone through that. I know people, I've seen it, I've seen it countless times. And I think about that, and and then if you're that kid and the minute you leave the house, then they're done with each other, it's like, well, so all that stuff that we did and all the time that we had together and all that stuff, that wasn't the truth. Because that's the way I felt about it, but I was like 8, I learned at 8 that all of that stuff is bullshit. The way they try to sell you on family, and for some people it works. Some people it works. I'm not going to say this ideal that I'm going to say doesn't work. Some people it does work, but in large majorities, the way I look at it is it's a lot of belief, and it's a lot of faith and all that other stuff, and you have to believe in the ideal for it to be true. And some people do, I do not. And the ideal is that, like, family, blood's thicker than water, family's all you got, all those kind of fucking kitschy sayings that everybody says. And a lot of people, that's their whole life. That's their whole fucking life. And I don't have that. Like, my mother and I were discussing Christmas the other night, and my girlfriend was having some issues with her family, and they're trying to plan their Christmas, but they don't really give a shit about her schedule, and she said something and they completely disregarded it, and I'm trying to say to her, look, if it doesn't work when it works, then we don't have to go. I don't understand why you have to go. And she's like, I want to go. And I say, why? And she says, because I'm supposed to. And so that obligation thing that's there, because it's your family, because of that, I don't have that. And I was talking to my mother, and I was like, you guys, you broke that. I mean, we tried, after my parents got divorced, we tried to have Christmas. I mean, there was one time my dad tried to choke me. There was another time I think we had a fist fight. I mean, stuff happened. Like, it was bad. It never worked out, and it was largely because most of the people in the situation were immature, and I was a kid, so I should be allowed to be immature out of the whole situation, right? Well, my parents were almost just as immature. My mother was better, but she wasn't much better, because a lot of the stuff that happened, a lot of the stuff that happened just wasn't good in any sense of the word. But that's getting away from the point. The point being is that all of that stuff happened, so it allowed me to understand that family and this whole blood thicker than water, family's all you got, that kind of thing, doesn't, it's the way it's sold, it doesn't exist in that packaging, right? People are just people. At the end of the day, that's what it is. Everybody's just a person, and they all have flaws, and they all suck in certain ways. And some suck more than others, and suck in different ways than others, in ways that are going to annoy you more than others. And I wonder, because if you grow up and your whole life you just buy into the ideal, right? You buy into the ideal, and then 30 years after you're born, your parents tell you that was a lie. Is that better or worse than having it happen as a kid? I don't really have an answer, because, to be honest, if I'm looking from my experience, I think I guess I'm happier that it happened when I was a kid. Maybe I wish it didn't happen at all, but I think having it happen as a kid taught me a lot of lessons that people my own age still don't know. You know what I'm saying? And there's certain things that I was exposed to. Now, granted, you might say, "Oh, well, a kid shouldn't be exposed." Maybe not, but I don't think it was for my detriment. I really think it was good for me in certain respects. It gave me more experience. It allowed me to be more prepared for certain situations. It allowed me to be able to deal with situations in a different way. Now, oftentimes it was when I was in arguments, or when I was fighting, or when I was trying to manipulate situations and stuff like that. So it didn't teach me anything real good, but it taught me things that, like, that person is a piece of shit. I can read people pretty well anyway, but I genuinely, like, for some people I know people who can read people well, but then they read people the way they want to read them. And what I mean by that is that they see what's there, but they take the bad parts and they color it over with a different color. They put their rosy colored glasses on and they color it rosy, and they say, "Oh no, they're like this because of that, and they're like this because of that," and they make excuses for them. I don't make excuses for people. I see people for what they are, and I say, "Look, this is the way it is." And it's one of the reasons I'm not as fond of people, and I don't go around people, and I call myself the Enlightened Misanthrope, is because at the end of the day, I don't buy bullshit from people. I don't want to hear it. I know it when it comes out. Before you even start talking, I know pretty much you're going to spew bullshit. And there is no in between there. And I don't color over with rosy glasses. I fucking tear open the wound and I dig around, and I'm one of those people. So for me, all of those characteristics came from the childhood that I had, because I had to learn. I had to do it to myself. I had to do it to myself to get better and that kind of thing. And I think that if I were, in the situation that this person that I know is in, it would be a lot harder. I think I would be more successful in maybe making it different if I were there. If it was me and I had what happened to me happen, and then somehow it didn't. Like, all the information that I gained from the time I was 8 until the age that I am now, if that all got transposed into an entirely different person who was in that situation, who never had any of that happen to them, I think I'd be more successful in staving it off, because I would know what to do. I might make it worse and make it blow up faster too. That's entirely possible, because I'm going to get you to make a decision one way or another. And oftentimes I can get you to make the decision I think you should make, but sometimes you're just going to make decisions that I don't agree with, and I'm not in charge of that. But I wonder, if it's just me, because I went through what I went through at the age that I went through, and I've gained skills that people my own age didn't have. Like, I learned how to cook, I learned how to clean, I learned how to do, because I learned how to pack. I was in and out of a suitcase every other weekend. I learned how to live without things. I learned how to cook for myself, because my mother was gone most weekends with her friends, and my dad he worked nights, so he slept all the time, and I just kind of made my own food and did my own thing. And I learned how to do my own laundry. I learned how to do my own dishes. I learned how to take care of myself. I became very self-sufficient at a young age, and for that, in the same way as being able to read people and seeing people for what they are, those are like the two things that were really redemptive in that situation. Now, when you get older, that gets harder to learn. when you're almost 30 or a little bit before that, I talked about this when I talked about Giannis, and I've talked about this with basketball players too. And when you're 24, supposedly your brain is done forming. So then anything after that's harder to learn, right? Well, if you're in your almost 30 years old or in your 30s and you're now trying to learn an entirely different way of life because your parents are done with each other, and the way of life you knew before not only doesn't exist but you think is a lie. Now you have to learn how to live your life a completely different way. And maybe you don't have to. Maybe that's a fatalistic way to look at it for me, because I'm maybe partially a fatalist. I don't really know, but I would think that's how that would go. So then you got to start from ground zero at a time where it's not easy for you to learn new things without, really a lot of effort. And then you're depressed on top of it. So if any of you have suffered from depression, you know that you might be depressed. I don't know. I won't say you are. You might be depressed. I would think you would be, because your whole life turned out to be a lie. If that's the case, you're probably going to be depressed. So if you're depressed, then if you've ever been depressed, you don't have a lot of motivation to do anything. I don't know. I think in thinking about this situation, the way that it's happening and the way it has happened for other people that I know too, there's other people that have been in this situation. It's come up quite a few times in my life as I've gotten older, because I used to go to other people's houses, and their parents seemed fine and everything was easier at their house, and so I spent a lot of my childhood at other people's houses because I did whatever I could to avoid my own. And I just think that if I had to go through that now, I think that would be harder than if I had gone through it when I did. But maybe I'm wrong, because it's hard for a kid. It's harder for a kid than an adult, that kind of thing. But given my viewpoint on the world, and given my ideas about things based on the fact that I went through what I went through at the age that I did, I don't think that I would necessarily probably have the same outlook, going through the divorce at whatever age for the first time as an adult. I probably wouldn't. But looking at it from the perspective that I have, I would think it would behoove me to have it done earlier than later. But I don't know. I'd be depressed either way. I was depressed, I would be depressed. And that goes into our third topic, which is, I read this thing, I think that was on New York Times. There was a guy who was talking about studies that are done on depression and how they're usually done on people who are depressed. And it said there isn't much research done on those who recover. And I posted this as a reply. I said, well, as someone who suffered depression, do you ever truly recover? I don't feel so. And there was no response, of course, because it's just a regular Twitter account. Somebody liked it, but there was no discussion, which was disappointing to me, because I honestly would like to know, if you're a depressed person, do you recover? I've never really recovered. I mean, I'm less depressed, but it's always still there. When I first met my girlfriend, when we lived in the little apartment that we lived in before we moved here, I was happier, but there were still days that I was depressed. I didn't want to get out of bed. I had no interest in talking to anybody. There was a time I remember specifically. It was one of the first times that it really hit me when I was with her. We were supposed to go to her family's house, and something had happened, and she didn't call me or something, and I was tired, and I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'll just stay in bed. And she didn't let me know she was coming home, and I was going to pretend like I didn't see the lights, and I was going to make her come upstairs, and I was going to make her, and she was already late, because she works late. So then the thing was like an hour before she got done with work, because of course they don't give a shit about her schedule. And I was like, nope, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to just stay in bed and make her even later, and I don't fucking care. But I didn't. I got up, I got dressed, I did what I was supposed to. And I told her about it. She's like, wow. She was really surprised, because that would be the first time that ever happened, and that was totally out of character as far as she was concerned. But, I mean, she knew who I was, but, I gave a hell of a lot of effort. I don't have a lot of effort left anymore. We've been together for a while, and we live in my grandmother's house, and I come home from work, or not work, from school or the gym, and I'll come home and I'll walk up the steps, or I'll walk up the driveway, or the walkway. Fucking A. Driveway and steps, but not the thing I wanted to say. Walkway. And I'll look at the door and I'll still wonder if my grandmother's in there. You know, she's been dead for 5 years, you know. So living here probably isn't the best for my mental health. I mean, it's not bad. We've changed it. It's gotten different, you know. I'm moving. It's wearing off, but yeah, I don't ever know if you're never depressed. I mean, I don't ever feel like I've truly moved past it. I mean, I've, you know, it makes me think about Anthony Bourdain too, because he was depressed and he wrote this thing about depression that I read. I think that was in 2009 when he wrote it. And it was about how it was like snowing. You know, depression was like it's snowing, and at first you can take care of it, but then eventually it becomes too much and you don't do anything, and then eventually the snow overtakes you. And the way he was living his life, you know, he was heavier before, you know, he wasn't into he was really into jiu-jitsu. He lost a bunch of weight. He had that girlfriend who got in trouble recently, but he had what seemed to be going for him. He had his daughter. He liked his show. He was doing a lot of work. He seemed to be in a good place, right? You would, if you were to surmise whether or not that guy was depressed, the answer would probably be no. Now, I'm not saying that he was or he wasn't. Obviously, he must have been suffering from it if he, you know, killed himself. But the point being is that you'd think that he was recovered. And I didn't like the word recovered either, because I think get better would be a better term. You know, do you ever get better? Because I don't think it ever goes away. I really don't think so. Now, with some people it might, you know, I think with certain kind of depressions, it depends on what you're talking about too, because there's people who feel blue or they feel sad. And then there's people with, like, you know, certain, you know, chemical deficiencies in their brain, you know, and I think I'm one of those people. I just, like, my girlfriend was talking, well, yeah, I do stuff to make you happy, she said, and when you're really upset, she said, or when you're really, you know, sad or whatever, and she said, that only works for so long. I said, yeah, because that, she releases whatever that is, but then that little spurt is all I got in there, you know, and so then that, when that dissipates of serotonin or whatever it is, when that goes away, that's it, you know, then I'm back to my normal state, because it's not triggering this onslaught. There's just that little, you know, little dash of nice, you know, of happy juice in there, and then it goes away, you know, because it's not a large portion, and I don't feel that personally I have that, but I just, you know, I wonder, because like I said, you look at Anthony Bourdain and he was very successful, and he looked like he lost weight. He was into jiu-jitsu. He had a girlfriend that he liked. Now, some people wonder if they broke up or whatever, and I have no frickin' idea, and if that happened, that might have thrown him back into it. But then again, if he was fully recovered, why would he fall back into it, right? Like, is is depression like substance abuse, where it never, you know, if you're an addict, you're always an addict? I kind of feel like it is. I feel if you're depressed, you're always depressed. I kind of feel like that. You have to combat against it every day. Same thing with anxiety. I happen to have both, and it's not good. It's not fun, and I have to learn how to manage it. You know, and it's not. But I'm not taking pills. You know, they're not good for you in the first place, and they're just a crapshoot. They just throw shit at you, and it's like, that didn't work. I took Zoloft, and I was up all night, slept all day. I was a fucking maniac. I mean, that stuff was not good for me. That was horrible. Like, I did some that was just bad. I mean, that was just bad. And they, oh, this will work, because that's what they were pushing at the time. So I don't want any drugs. You know, I'm done. I take tryptophan supplements and GABA stuff. I take those together because they're supposed to help, but I don't know. I just think that there's something to be there. I wonder if you're ever fully recovered, if you ever suffer from, like, if you fall into a state of depression, an actual depression, not like feeling sad or whatever, you know, like a lesser state, because there are levels to depression. I mean, there really are, and anybody who gets upset about that really doesn't understand what depression is, because when you're severely depressed, you understand the levels that you went through to get down in that deep dark hole. And when you're kind of upset sometimes and you feel bad about yourself every once in a while and you're sort of depressed, that's different. And I'm not saying it's not depression. I mean, it's all I would let it fall under an umbrella term. But the problem is there's levels to this game, and I played on the very lowest level, and it was not fun, or the very highest level, whichever way you look. I say lowest as because I use the hole analogy, and I was as low in the hole as you could get, and I just curled up in there and was waiting to die, and I crawled out of the hole some ways, but every once in a while I step on a rung on the ladder going up the wall that busts out, and I fall down a couple of steps, and it takes me a little while. But I still can't see the light at the top. I'm not seeing my way out. So I honestly don't know if you can ever not be depressed. And if you're listening, Misanthropic89 on Twitter, you can find my Gmail. If you got this, find me on SoundCloud, The Enlightened Misanthrope. It's got my Facebook and my Instagram, and it has my email address at Gmail. Let me know. Honestly, if you suffer from depression and you listen to this, I don't think anybody is listening to this other than me. But if you do and you were depressed and you feel a lot better, and however, I'd like to hear your story. I honestly would, because I'm genuinely curious whether or not you can ever fully recover from depression, because I just don't see it. Like, you have to fight it. You have to fight it every single day, and I don't see it as something that just, oh, okay, we're done now. I don't see it that way. But maybe I'm wrong. It's just like the topic before. Maybe you want your parents to get divorced when you were older because you think that'd be easier. I don't know. And with that topic, send me something too. I'm more than willing to hear conversation about this, because I don't understand. I see it one way, and I'm genuinely wondering whether or not somebody can explain it to me in a way that makes sense the other way, because I'm more than open to having the conversation. I tend to believe the way that I believe is correct, much like everybody else does, but I would like to hear the other side. I don't hear a lot of the other side because I don't go outside. So I just talked about how depression, you had to fight against it. And to make this podcast a little less depressing in general, the NBA had a fight with the Rockets and the Lakers the other day. And LeBron wasn't really involved, but it was Rajon Rondo and Chris Paul, and then Brandon Ingram came out of left field and he punched, it was. I posted this on Twitter or Instagram, I don't remember which, but it seemed to me that Mike Breen was trying to audition for Joe Rogan's job on the UFC, because you would have sworn that those guys knocked each other out and there was blood. They threw like maybe half a dozen punches. They were horrible punches in the first place. Supposedly, Rondo spit on Chris Paul, so if he did, I'm not saying he did, I didn't see any evidence of it, but the NBA, I think, came out and said that he did. If that's the case, that he actually spit on him, well, then Chris Paul was justified. Brandon Ingram, I don't know what his deal is, I really don't know what his deal is. He's kind of like this guy who got drafted really high and is a mid-level player at best. And now he wants to be a tough guy when you look like you could break him in half just by flicking him, he's tiny. He's not a big dude. But I saw this reaction on Twitter, and everybody's like, oh my God, they fought and this brawl, and they kept calling it a brawl and all this. It was ridiculous. Like, what is with the over-sensationalizing of everything? Like, anything that happens outside of what normal, like, they should have played the game and then they should have went home. And because they threw punches, that's the worst of brawl. They brawled. The whole arena came down and fought each other. You just swear to God that Rondo and Chris Paul, laced them up and just started whacking on each other, and everybody stood around and was like, yeah, like the frickin' prison movies, where the guy's fighting the big guy, and I couldn't believe it. Granted, I haven't never seen that. The sports media does it all the time. But I figured 2 to 3 games, that's the most anybody should get suspended. Now, Ingram got, I think, 4 games, but he had nothing to do with it. He wasn't really involved, and the two guys who were involved, Chris Paul got the least, and then Rondo got the next. I mean, that's 2 to 3 games is enough. Like, they were like, oh, we'll see how big this suspension is. It's like, if it's more than like a couple of games, that's bullshit, because it wasn't even a fight. They punched each other like half a dozen times in total. All 3 guys threw 3 punches if you divide it even, or 2 punches if you divide it evenly, right? The 2 guys in the middle threw 3 punches if you only count them and you don't even count Ingram because he came in and threw 1, I don't see, I don't see the point in this bullshit where and then then you watch the video and Carmelo Anthony's getting in Ingram's face. He's like, yeah. And it's like, you're only doing that because you're the same height and you probably weigh 40 pounds more than that guy does. And he ain't no tough guy. He's like Blake Griffin. Like, Blake Griffin last night scored like 50 points and everybody's talking about how, he scored 50 points. Who cares? Blake Griffin stinks. I mean, if you ask me, I think he stinks. I used to like him a lot, but his personality has just, it's gotten to the point, like, at Oklahoma, he was one of my favorite players. I loved him at Oklahoma. First couple years in the league, when he hurt his knee that first year, I was so sad for him. I thought, oh, fuck, he's going to be terrible now, because all of his game was based on athleticism. And I just, over the years, my respect for him has eroded immeasurably because of the fact that everybody shits on him all the time, and he never stands up for himself. And then when he does, he's immediately has somebody standing in between them, right? So then he has nothing. Like, there's no danger. There's no danger. It's not Chris Paul and Rajon Rondo who are going nose to nose, and before anybody knows it, they're throwing punches. That doesn't happen with Blake Griffin, like, skirmishes, if you want to call it that. The guy, that's one thing about the Laker fight that was interesting, because everybody was calling it a brawl, and Mark Stein, who does work for New York Times now, I think, he used to be on ESPN. I liked him a lot, and he said that it was a scuffle, and I said, that's a better word for it, a scuffle, because this brawl bullshit is dumb, But, Blake Griffin, there's always a guy in between him and the other guy, and it's always a guy on his team pushing him away, like, come on, Blake, come on, Blake. And he's like, I mean, he's more important on his team than that guy probably is on their team. But I don't understand how people let people punk you like that. Jimmy Butler, I don't like him. We've covered that a lot. I don't like him as a franchise, but as a player, and if I had to play with that guy, I'd probably be Jimmy Butler. I'm not the most talented guy, but I will outwork you, and I'm going to be a stubborn asshole, and you're going to have to reckon with me. At the end of the day, that's what's going to happen. And I don't know. I've lost respect for Blake Griffin because he let so many people punk him, and that's. This brawl business is like, everybody's like, oh, well, you can't do that, and the kids are watching. And I saw this thing on Facebook about how if my kid's getting bullied by your kid, I'm going to tell my kid that he can go to school and fuck your kid up or something. And there was another post on top of that, which is like, oh, this is the problem and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so your kid's the bully, and then that kid's getting bullied. So he goes in there and punches the bully, and somehow that kid is exacerbating the problem. I don't understand what is the goal here. Like, are we looking to make kids do what? Nothing? Because, if you're a woman or a guy or anybody, there are certain times in your life where you may have to defend yourself. Because the world that we live in now, everybody expects to be protected everywhere they go. They expect that every place they should go is safe and they should be comfortable and whatever. I'm going to let you all in on a secret if you're listening to this and you think that. Life is not like that. There are places you are going to go where there's going to be bad people wanting to do bad things to you. It multiplies more if you're a woman than if you're a man. But there are still places like you will go as a man where people will want to take your wallet or take your watch or take your car or whatever it is. Or they might not like your face and they want to punch you because they just don't like you. And if you're a woman, there are places you will go where there will be creeps who want to do, unspeakable things to you. And then take your money, your wallet, your watch, and your car. All of those things apply to you too. And that happens to guys too, but either it doesn't get reported or nobody cares if you listen to some people. But the point in being is that you people who think that shit won't happen, it does happen in certain places. And if you're not prepared, you're going to have that happen to you, and then you're going to be irreparably damaged for the rest of your life. So when you watch the NBA and those guys fight, I don't think what Rondo did was right, but what Chris Paul did was right, because you're goddamn right. If you spit on me, I'm going to punch you in the face. Fuck, who the fuck do you think you are to spit on me, you piece of shit? That's the kind of response I think you should have. What are you supposed to do? Say, he spit. What was he supposed to do? Raise his hand and tell the fucking referee, he spit on me. Look, here's the spit. It's all over my shirt. And this is my favorite jersey. And I mean, what the fuck? He should have done what he did. Punched him in the face. That's what he should have done. He shouldn't have got that close to that nutcase in the first place, because Rondo's unstable. I mean, we've proven that. He's proven that over the years. But they don't like each other on top of it, so you know he doesn't like you and he's unstable. Stay the fuck away from him. Or you get close to him, he spits on you, you punch him. Because he didn't do anything at first. They were jawing back and forth. He might have poked him or something, and then he spit on him. But a poke, a relative response to a poke is another poke. It's not a spit. A spit, you're taking it to another level and you're asking to get punched. I don't care who you are. If a little kid spit on me, I'd slap it. I mean, that's how it is. As a little kid, if you'd spit on me as a little kid, I'd slap you, because I didn't really know how to punch when I was a little kid. So you learn that on the playground. There were certain things. You could stand toe-to-toe with a guy and jaw back and forth and poke each other and shove each other and, that kind of stuff. But the minute some kind of projectile came or you threw something or whatever, anytime something comes at me at a considerable rate of speed and touches me, and if it's gross, you're going down. And that's what happens when you're a kid. You learn that on the playground. You learn the rules of being a person. This is what's acceptable. This is what's not. And the kids that are at home, and it seems to me have no parenting. I'm not saying that that's the case, but that was usually the case where I came from. The kids that their parents, they were wild animals. Those kids were the ones that you had to reckon with. And you had to put them in line all the time, because they didn't give a shit about anybody's rules but their own, right? Because they were led to believe that they were in charge, because their parents couldn't control them, which was bullshit. So what I'm saying to you is, when you tell your kids, oh, you can't fight and you can't do this and you can't do that, you're doing them a disservice. You're putting them at the back end of the line, because much like I said about the divorce thing, I learned some lessons from my parents. Inadvertent lessons, but lessons nonetheless, about people, about the way the world works, about all of that stuff. And it served me well going forward, because it prepared me for certain situations that aren't exactly pleasant. And if you believe in the indoctrination that you get and the ideals that you get when you're a kid, if you put everything you got behind that, you're going to be fucked over and disappointed so many times before you finally figure out. And some people I know aren't like that. They just don't give it up. They keep thinking that the rest of their lives, which you can debate whether that's good or bad. I'm not here to comment on that. But what I am commenting on is that, for me, learning that stuff. So by doing that, I gained a leg up on some people. And I also know how to fight. I also know how to do things for myself. I know how to be self-sufficient. I know how to be self-reliant. I know how to, grow my own food. I have a lot of skills in my toolbox that a lot of people my age, even when I was younger, I didn't gain those skills in my 20s. I gained those skills in my, some of them before I was in double-digit age. And as I grew through that, I gained skills and gained skills. Now the skills that I'm gaining are like fucking general repair of everything, because all the shit I got is broken. But, learning, I knew how to saw down trees, but doing it myself instead of having, my dad do most of the work, because that's what happens. They get old, they pass, the stuff that they did that was their job in the situation becomes your job, and then you have to find somebody to do your job, And anybody who doesn't recognize what things are, and at least give your kid the information or prepare your kid for that, or prepare yourself for it, you're doing yourself a disservice. I mean, you really are, because these people that are willing, if you're willing to live in reality, okay, you can see reality for what it is and not like it and want it to be different. But at the end of the day, that's where you should live. And living in la la land and oh, everybody's wonderful and candy and lollipops and cupcakes and all that bullshit. You live there, there are going to be people who are going to fuck you over relentlessly. And they aren't going to think a goddamn thing about it. And you might say, oh, that's not true. Okay. And when it happens to you, you're going to be shocked. Absolutely shocked that it happens. And there's going to be that one person in your life who's realistic. And they're going to come to you and go, what the fuck did you expect? And they're going to laugh in your face. And you're going to be pissed because you're like, how dare you laugh at me? And they're just going to be like, these are all things you should know already. The fact that you're this naive at that age is really sad. And I think what we're trying to do is a lot of people are trying to make other people just as naive as them. Because rather than look at the world and see it for what it is and understand, this happens here and that goes there, and, putting things in its proper perspective, we're just trying to muddy up the perspectives and try to make it all, one thing. We're trying to make it all one white or one canvas, any color you want to pick, but it's all that color, And I don't know why you would do that. Why, for the sake of everything holy, you would do that? Because you're shooting yourself in the foot. I mean, you're really shooting yourself in the foot. And you're shooting your kid in the foot, and you're shooting everybody in the foot. I mean, anybody you interact with. If you influence anybody, you're screwing everybody over by thinking that way. And I don't know. I wouldn't wish that upon you. And I sure hope you wouldn't wish that upon any kid that you have. Because if you're one of those people who feels like that, I'm not saying bullying should exist. I don't really think that's... If you got that from what I'm saying, I think you're trying to hear that. But what I am saying is that being that we know bullying exists, pretending that it doesn't make it go away. And not preparing your kid for it is foolish on your part, because then they're going to be less prepared than the bully is. And those kids, we treat kids like they're fucking, I don't know, Fabergé eggs or something, but they're going to be people at some point. And granted, they're going to be people in the way that you shape them, but they're going to be people who are either prepared for life or ill-prepared for life. And the less you expose them to, the less they're going to be prepared. And that's why I think what happened, with my parents' divorce and stuff like that, exposed me to a lot of stuff. And that's why I believe what I believe, because I'm more prepared for that stuff when it comes my way. I try to avoid it because I can see it coming, and I try to get the hell out of the way. But if I have to face it head on, I can, because I know what to expect. So, to finish up the fight comment, because I got way off a topic on that one. I had to look down and remember what the fuck I started with. I think that the suspensions were okay. I think the hoopla about it was overblown. Kind of reminded me of the UFC 229 thing where the guy jumped, where Khabib jumped over the cage and McGregor had guys jump in. Everybody blew the hell out of proportion out of that. They blew this fucking brawl, as they called it on Twitter, out of proportion, because it wasn't anything. I mean, it was honestly nothing. If it had been on a non-ESPN televised game, I doubt anybody would even have heard that much about it. I mean, they might have seen the footage and whatever else, but it was because it was on ESPN. Oh my god! And the sad part is that I wanted to watch that game and I forgot that it was on, and then I didn't watch it, and then that happened, and I was like, fuck! I was gonna watch that game. God damn it! But I just don't think, if you're upset about it, man, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it really was nothing. It was a whole lot of nothing. Mike Breen wanted to make it something, but it was a whole lot of nothing. And I think my final topic tonight will be, seeing as it's coming off the bye week for the Packers, and when this comes out, either Sunday or Monday, they'll have played again. I kind of wanted to just talk about the Packers just a little bit before, because I'm wondering what's the best course of action here. For years I've thought we should fire McCarthy. I think Rodgers has kept him employed, but almost single-handedly, because they got rid of the defensive coordinator. Dom Capers, didn't really do much for McCarthy at all. I mean, maybe, McCarthy being a relatively new head coach at the time when he signed I hired Capers, and then Capers, had been a head coach multiple times and had more experience and had been around the league a long time. He probably was, mentor-ish. I don't know if that's the case, but it could be. And he didn't really do a lot for him. And then Rodgers is mad about the coaching staff changes that they made. And I don't know if Rodgers is keeping McCarthy employed or not. It seems like he wants to get rid of him because he's mad about the play calling, And it seems to me that he is like, come on, guys, we got to, and he can see the writing on the wall. I mean, every week that his knee hurts, he can tell, I am this much older than I was the last time, and I won 1 Super Bowl so far, and I got this money now, and all this other stuff. So the expectations on him are very high, and I would be in Rodgers' camp. Period. I mean, he's a football player that I liked since college, and I think that if I'm going to side with anybody, it's going to be with him. But I just don't know. Like, you watched him play the 49ers, and I thought for sure they were going to lose that game. I figured they were going to lose because it just seemed like one of those games they would lose. And to have Mason Crosby come back and kick all those field goals and do the redeem himself from the week before. That was a good story, but they had to pull all the stops to beat the fucking Niners with their backup quarterback. Their defensive line ravaged the Packers line. I mean, I don't know if it's, I think Bulaga got hurt or is hurt, or was hurt, and Bakhtiari, there must be something wrong with him. I don't look at the injury reports anymore because I'm not a bettor, but I know Rodgers is hurt, and a lot of the times when that shit would happen, where the pocket would collapse awful quickly, he'd get the hell out of there, and he had really good awareness. Well, he can have as much awareness as he wants now. He can't run. I mean, he can't, that quick movement with his leg. When your knee hurts, you don't have that. If your knee ever hurt, try to move. Just rabbit someplace quickly. Push off that leg real hard. It ain't gonna happen. Not without a severe amount of pain. And his knee injury is probably 4 times what any kind of knee injury you got. I mean, granted, not. You might have busted your ACL or something like that, and then that's probably the same. But I feel like they've squandered so many years with McCarthy, and they've squandered so many years of Rodgers that even if they won every Super Bowl from now until the time Rodgers retired, which I doubt is going to happen, I feel like time was wasted. And I wonder how Rodgers feels about that. To know that you're that good and the organization that you're stuck with is just, we're fine with the same thing. We went 10-6. We got in the playoffs. We lost the first game. We'll get them next year. How many years did they do shit like that? I mean, all these years later, they still don't have a running back. All these years later, the receiving core is meh. I mean, Adams is good. Cobb's okay. And Geronimo Allison? They drafted a shit ton of receivers this year, and I like that St. Brown guy. The Scantling guy's okay. The Moore guy, I don't really ever see him, but he's supposed to be all right. But they didn't have a tight end. They keep going through him. They had one. They had Cook, and then they let him go, and they brought in that asshole Martellus Bennett who, he wanted to play with Rodgers. Rodgers got hurt, and then he left. And that was it. He was done. I'm done. My shoulder hurts. I'm done. And now he's retired. Well, good. Go be retired and don't come back. And I remember that guy. I think it was on Hard Knocks, the Cowboys version, and he was on there. There was something with the Cowboys anyway, on behind the scenes thing. And I remember watching that, and I was like, everybody thinks he's funny. I mean, he's interesting for a football player, but he's not. His antics aren't appreciated, I don't think, for me. And I just think he seems like he's really immature. And granted, he might be, and that's okay, but I just, when he's making social commentary and people are going to him for opinions about stuff, and he's talking about, I just think if you're immature, the amount of immature you are should be directly related with how much we care about your opinion. And people seem to care about his opinion. They don't care about Gronkowski's opinion, and Gronkowski is a lunkhead. At least he seems like one. I mean, I think he the other day said that Julian Edelman is a superior specimen instead of a specimen, because he doesn't know how to say specimen. Jesus Christ, he's going to make me stupid by proxy. I mean, something about Bobby Flay teaching him how to make a souffle, and he didn't spell souffle like Souffle, I think is how you spell that. He spelled it like his sister, Sue, Seuflay. Or had nothing to do with Bobby Flay, but he spelled it like that. I don't remember, but I mean, we don't go to Gronk for any kind of opinion. Nobody listens to him. At least I don't. I mean, outside of Boston, But I got off on my tail. And Jimmy Graham's okay. He's not. He's old Jimmy Graham. He's not the Jimmy Graham of old. The defense hasn't been good in I don't know how many years. They have no pass rush really to speak of. I was wondering why Matthews was turning it on so much. Apparently he's in a contract year, which would make sense. I really hope he goes somewhere else. I'm so sick of that guy. He sat around with injuries and screwing around with all that money, and now he wants to try because he's healthy. No, he's not healthy now. It's because he's getting a contract. You watch. He'll get a new contract for a shitload of money, and he ain't going to do a goddamn thing. You watch. I'd laugh if they franchise tagged him. I really would. I know this is heresy in Wisconsin because you have to love fucking Clay Matthews, but out of those USC linebackers that came out that year, it was Cushing, Maluga, and Matthews was the third one. Cushing was by far my favorite. Now, granted, he's done steroids like 3 times, so I don't know what the hell that says about him, but he was by far my favorite. And then there was Maluga, who I liked, but I didn't think he was. I thought he was more of like a college guy, And then Matthews, I was like, I don't understand this at all. Like, I don't think he's going to be good. And you can argue he probably, for a time, was the best of the bunch. I think Cushing's always been better when he's played. Granted, now everybody's going to discredit him because he was on PEDs. But I don't think, I don't necessarily think that I don't know. I read this thing about whatever he got popped for, he just kept taking. Like, he knew he took it. And he was like, I just take it, and he kept doing it. I read that somewhere. I don't remember where that was, but that was when he got suspended the last time. And I was sad that he went up to the Seahawks and they didn't sign him, because if anybody could use a linebacker like him, it's the Seahawks. I wish the Packers would sign him. I know they won't touch him with a 10-foot pole, but Navarro Bowman's out there too. I mean, there's guys on defense that they could add. They just never add the right guys on defense. Their offensive line, this draft and stuff is okay, but I mean, what the hell? They got Byron Bell starting at guard and Spriggs at tackle, and Lindsley was a good pick. I like Lindsley. He's a good pick, but Bakhtiari's okay. He's a lot better than I thought he would be, because when they picked him, I'm like, who the fuck is that? And then they started him at left tackle. I'm like, who the fuck is that? I forgot who he was. I looked him up and after the draft, and I'd forgotten by the time they played the season. And I remember Bulaga coming out of college. He was typical Iowa lineman. Oh, he's really good. His arms are really short. He's really good, though, because that guy who coaches the Iowa Hawkeyes in college, he teaches guys how to block really well. I think he used to be an offensive line coach. And so they have really good technique in college, but they have like tiny T-Rex arms, so they're trying to block guys with T-Rex arms. So then if you get a bull rusher up underneath them or a speed guy, they can't, Usually they got pretty good feet, but their arms aren't the best. Like their ability to use their arms. Like Robert Gallery was a good example of that. Anybody who knows football hopefully remembers who Robert Gallery is. But, I mean, you look at, now Riley Reef, I think, starts at left tackle, but for a while there he was at right tackle, and they drafted Taylor Decker with the Lions, and he moved over to right, but I think he's back at left with the Vikings. And then there was Brandon Sheriff, who was a left tackle, and he plays fucking guard now. I mean, he's a good guard, but, you know, they just, I don't know. Their line is never been, and I wonder how you would feel. You're arguably one of the greatest passers of all time, like just arm talent wise. Although there was that one play that he threw that touchdown to Adams, and everybody's like, "Oh, he threw it with pinpoint precision." I'm like, the cornerback mistimed the fucking jump. Had he jumped a half a second later, he would have probably knocked it off or blocked or intercepted it. You know, I think Rodgers is good and lucky, and when you mix those two things together, you get a really good player. And I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just saying some of the times when they brag about him, it's like, nah, that's not exactly what happened. I think you're trying to, you know, basically sell what they call in the fight game selling wolf tickets. You know, it's a bunch of bullshit, basically. I don't know. At least as far as I understand it, wolf tickets mean like a bunch of bullshit. I looked it up one time. I forgot exactly what it said, but I don't know. I was just thinking about that with the Packers, and there was the bye week, so they didn't play, and I didn't get to be disappointed and then shocked and then disappointed and then shocked and then really shocked because they won. I was like, holy fuck, they were going to play. Because I must have said 3 times in the fourth quarter, they're going to lose this fucking game. The defense is going to screw it up, you know. Beathard didn't help himself much. But, I mean, he's probably a good backup, if not a third-string guy. I mean, he played at Iowa, another Iowa guy, decent quarterback, but there's a reason they got Jimmy Garoppolo. And it's just the facts. They started, last year that was Blaine Gabbert, then it was Beathard, and then it was Garoppolo. There's a reason Garoppolo's there. He's not there now because he tore his ACL, but there was a reason they got Garoppolo, because they needed somebody else. But Godwin, I think that's Goodwin. That guy that ran, holy Christ, he used to run track and stuff. That guy just kicked the shit out of the pack. I mean, that one guy. And what the hell happened to Pierre Garçon? I mean, he's not that old. I looked it up. He's not that old. I think he's like 32. And granted, in football years, it's like 55. But, I mean, he's not ancient. And even Boyer McFarland brought it up on the broadcast. He's like, yeah, they're kind of wondering if he's old or if he's done or if he's just hurt or what's going on, you know. And I don't know. It's the football players having such precipitous drop-offs is just interesting to me. And then everybody, Adrian Peterson's done. I don't know. I watched the Redskins against the Cowboys. He didn't look done to me. I mean, he's got an obvious hitch in his giddy up when he runs. Like, that one leg is not pumping at the same rate the other one is. And I know he's got, I think he sprained his ankle and separated his shoulder. So, like, I have a bad ankle and my one shoulder hurts. And when I run, for whatever reason, fucks them both up at the same time on both sides. So I can see, like, you watched him run that one play and he's just, like, obviously laboring on the one leg. But he did it. I mean, he's out there. He don't give a fuck, you know. I still think the Packers should have signed him. Giving him, they were giving him 4 running backs, and you play Peterson, 50% of the game, and the other 50 is split into, I definitely think Montgomery should go back to receiver. I've said this before. I don't see the point. Although, I say that, and then he has that big play in the end of the game against the Niners, so everybody's like, whoa, but I don't know. I still think he should go to receiver. He was good as receiver in college, so I don't know. Because I like Aaron Jones. They don't play him enough. Jamal Williams is better than Montgomery. They're both better than Montgomery, if you ask me. And so then if they had Peterson, they could just do 50% and then 25-25, and it's not like McCarthy's not going to run the fucking ball 150 fucking times. He's so stupid. I mean, he runs the ball first and second down every fucking time, throws on third, and then punts on fourth. I mean, that's what it is. At one time, he used to run it 3 fucking times and then punt on the. He's just a bad coach. I mean, you look at guys like you got Sean McVay out there and Kyle Shanahan and these young guys who are ripping up the league. Even old guys, like Doug. Well, Doug Marrone's not a good example because they run the ball a lot down there. But Bill O'Brien with Deshaun Watson and who the hell else? I'm trying to think. Who's a new coach with a. Or an old coach with Andy Reid. You look at his system with the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, these are old guys and they're smarter than fucking McCarthy, who's just he's just a bad coach. He's just I can't say that. I'm not the authority, I guess, but I just think that it's time for a change. I mean, it really is. Doug Peterson's better than he is. I really don't know. I'm so sick of watching the same. I've watched the same team since they won the Super Bowl almost every year, and they haven't improved very much. They got different pieces and they move people around, but they don't really improve. Like, they're not getting better, and that just bothers me. So I don't know. I hope that it turns into something better and Rodgers does. I hope Rodgers wins a couple more Super Bowls before he retires. That'd be good for me. It'd probably be good for him too, but I don't see it happening. I think if he wins one more, he'll probably win it somewhere else. His last couple years will be like Favre, going someplace to try to win a championship, but he'll probably do it. I hope not, but I could see it happening. Yeah, and I know there's some UFC fights coming up, so I'll probably talk about those in my next podcast. Sad that they're going away, but I'm going to watch them until they do, because I'm not going to be pissed at the UFC. I'm just going to be pissed at ESPN. So I suppose that's the end of the podcast. Like I said before, it's Enlightened Misanthrope, the Enlightened Misanthrope on SoundCloud. We're also on iTunes under Entertainment, I think. We are on YouTube. It's audio only. I don't tape this or anything. So like I had somebody design a logo that is like, basically it's like a Yule log at Christmas time, but it's well, if you go down YouTube you can see what it is, but it's basically an animation that just kind of it's kind of like a flame thing the whole time. So at least there's something there if you want to just turn it on and have it on. However, you could just turn it on and do whatever you're doing on the computer and listen to it in the background. Or you can go on iTunes and download, or if you have an Apple phone, Apple Podcast, download it onto your phone and listen to it whenever you want. Or SoundCloud, download it, listen to it, same thing. And you can find my emails are in previous podcasts. I'm on Twitter at Misanthropic89. That's Enlightened Misanthrope on there. Instagram, it's the Enlightened Misanthrope. If you want to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me. I'm more than willing to talk to people. I've said this before, but I'll reiterate it again just in case you're listening to it and you're the one guy who's going to get a hold of me and is an asshole. Don't be an asshole. Don't send me asshole messages about bullshit that, just to be try to start a fight with me. I really don't have any energy to fight with you, so I just won't respond. It probably, it'll look worse on you because you took the time to reach out over the internet to tell somebody something, to be shitty to somebody for no reason. But that's because you can hide behind a computer and I can't, punch you in the face for it. So it's easier to do shit on the computer. According to what everybody tells me, I don't know. I don't have that problem. So, other than that, reach out, let me know. I honestly would like to hear about some of these topics, like, the family thing about getting divorced when you're older, or when you're younger. Which one do you think? I understand. And if you're going to say, well, a kid shouldn't be exposed to that, then that's all right. But I honestly would like some reasoning. Don't just send me a one-word answer. If you don't want to answer it, that's fine. But don't answer me with a one-word answer, because that doesn't really help me much, And I might bring it up and talk about it, and try to. It might change my mind. You never know. It might bring up a different subject. Same thing with the depression. If you're depressed, and you feel you've recovered, especially like if you agree with me and you want to explain that, then I appreciate that. But if you feel like you've recovered from depression, I honestly would like to hear that, and I'd like to hear detailed explanations about how you were depressed and then how you got through it and why you feel you recovered, because I honestly think that I don't think you can do that. I just don't, and I don't really know anybody who's actually been depressed who would say that, but I don't know. And yeah, I guess that's it for today. I hope you all enjoy the rest of the week, and until episode 6, boy, that was weird. I couldn't think of what episode it was, but until episode 6, I hope you all enjoy it. Talk to you later.